All right, Saagar, what are you looking at?
The thing about Joe Biden that I often cannot believe is that it's real. I felt that way with Trump. The first time I went to the Oval Office to interview him, I looked at him and I was like, wow, that really is the guy from The Apprentice sitting behind the Resolute desk. With Biden, I guess it's more believable that he's in there, but it is less believable in the way that he conducts himself. And it's just one of the worst leaders to occupy the office in some time. With Ukraine and on gas specifically, he never ceases to amaze me. And that is exactly what he did while conducting a press conference capping the recent NATO summit when he was asked by a reporter, how long should Americans be paying high gas prices at the pump to support Ukraine? Here's what he had to say.
And how long is it fair to expect American drivers to continue to pay a premium because of this war?
Let me hear this. The second part of the question was, would it bring down the price?
Will it bring down prices? And the war has pushed prices up. They could go as high as $200 a barrel, some analysts think. How long is it fair to expect American drivers and drivers around the world to pay that premium for this war?
As long as it takes. So Russia cannot, in fact, defeat Ukraine and move beyond Ukraine.
As long as it takes. I've tried very hard not to sound callous on this show. I am genuinely with the Ukrainian people. I hope they win. But I also care a lot more about America. So I once again have to ask, how much longer and how much higher should prices go to keep the territorial integrity of the eastern Donbas region of Ukraine? Notice, he doesn't answer the question that way. He says as long as it takes so that Russia cannot defeat Ukraine. But is an outright victory on the battlefield even attainable for either side? That's a great question that I'll answer later. But notice also what Biden's top economic advisor says when even CNN is forced to ask him a somewhat critical question.
They say that this could be a long war measured in years, and I think everybody understands why this is happening, but is it sustainable? What do you say to those families who say, listen, we can't afford to pay $4.85 a gallon for months, if not years. This is just not sustainable.
Well, what you heard from the president today was a clear articulation of the stakes. This is about the future of the liberal world order, and we have to stand firm.
Future of the liberal world order. Notice they just keep reaching for grand strategic principles to justify their idiocy. Because if they have to justify the details, the American people would continue to turn on them in an instant. At the beginning of this war, when it appeared that literally a Russian annexation of the entire country of Ukraine was on the table, sure, Americans stepped up. They said, yeah, I am willing to help Ukraine and pay a lot to do that. But now the Ukrainians have pushed them back, and the Russians have committed to a war of attrition strategy in the east. The Ukrainians are doing the best they can, but any honest assessment tells us that the Russians are taking strategic town after town in the east, and that by this honest measure, that the Ukrainians are losing. So how much longer? How many more towns in the long-contested East are worth the economic pain of the entire West and the destruction of the global supply chain and the sparking of a global food crisis? When you frame things that way, you get different answers, don't you? In fact, people in Washington are quietly whispering the truth behind closed doors, that the public pronouncements by the White House about how well the Ukrainians are doing are flat wrong. The Pentagon, in fact, has quietly stopped publishing assessments about how many Ukrainian soldiers have been killed to cover up any conjecture about how the war of attrition is taking a toll on them. Their excuse for this and their secrecy about what America is sending to Ukraine and why they're doing this is that they claim by publishing that information, they would be helping the Russians. So that's why it needs to stay secret forever. First of all, the Russians are on the ground there. I'm pretty sure they know how well the Ukrainians are doing since they're the ones who are fighting them. Second, it sounds pretty convenient for zero transparency, ever. I watched this whole story play out in Afghanistan over my entire career. Every time the Pentagon wanted to hide how badly we were losing, they would classify the figures. If you asked why, it was because publishing the data would help the Taliban. History repeats itself again, this time just a lot faster. When the fall of Kabul happened, there was a lot of big talk about how surprised everyone was. If you were paying attention to the small stuff, it was no surprise at all. Now, I hope the Ukrainian military cause is much better run than the Afghan National Security Forces. But the real question is, how do you even know? Should we accept the same platitudes that they fed us during that war right now? The more they keep us in the dark, the less say that we get. If this is about the big stuff like sticking it to Putin, then the MSNBC allies with more Ukrainian and gay pride flags outside their houses than American flags will go right along. The rest of us can protest, but we're going to shut up, as long as so-called Putin lovers are captured by Russians for asking basic questions with what they'll accuse us of for. The longer this thing drags on, the more stupid schemes that the administration can try to come up with to play act trying to lower the price of gas without actually doing it. And the latest one is especially pathetic for the presidential account, who's please asking gas companies to lower prices. Because yeah, that's how it works. That's what they're going to keep up day after day and month after month as the territories in the eastern part of Ukraine get passed back and forth and blood is spilt. You will still be paying and they'll still keep repeating the same old BS. I again want to state, I understand that if you're Ukrainian or you're deeply sympathetic to that cause, that this can sound callous. But perhaps a little bit of cold, hard reality is necessary right now to cut through the lies that our leaders and the media continue to tell us, keeping well-meaning Americans in line. You're not a Putin stooge if you are asking how much longer you can take this. You're just a normal person trying to live your life. You're not wrong to be disgusted with our president, this administration, our media, or politics in general right now, because almost none of it is oriented towards both creating a good outcome for the world or even a good outcome for you at home. Ultimately, that is first and foremost job the President of the United States. And with Biden, he is failing on almost every single level.
Cable news is ripping us apart, dividing the country, making it impossible to function as a society, and making it impossible to know just what is true and what is false. But the good news is they are failing and they know it.
That is why we're building something new, a new mainstream, a healthier one, something more trustworthy, something that we are going to need in one of the most pivotal times in American history. We are building up here for the midterms, for the upcoming presidential election, but we need your help. So if you can help us out by becoming a premium member today at breakingpoints.com, we're trying to change America for the better and the entire world.
So what are you waiting for, guys? Go to breakingpoints.com and sign up and help us build a new mainstream.